Hello again, Struck Club. What the Struck is Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Today, with this video, I aim to answer this question and many more that you might have had about the recently released game from Gearbox. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, it is a game set in a made-up universe that exists in the Borderlands universe, which for us is made up as well. It puts us as a player controlling a character. It puts us as a character in the Borderlands universe playing a character in the made-up Bunkers and Badasses universe, in particular in the Wonderlands game that Tiny Tina is the game master of. It's a typical water shooter in the Borderlands style. And it does a lot of things the way Borderlands 3 did it, as well as some things better. Although there are some things I don't like, and overall my impressions of the game have been 80% blissful joy and 20% disappointing frustration. There have been moments where it's in the very highs of how I can feel, and then other times I would feel in the lowest of lows. That's how the game makes you feel. Hopefully this video answers the questions why I feel that way about the game, why this is my experience. I would not give a score in the end of the video. I would just list what I consider pros, what I consider cons, and you can also read my more detailed version of this on my website on struckclub.xyz, because I'll try to keep this video as short as possible. I'm gonna try to fit into 20 minutes, hopefully I can, and the more expanded version is on my website, so buckle up and let's go. The story begins with us, a person inside the Borderlands universe joining Tiny Tina and a colorful mix of Borderlands universe characters for a game of Bunkers and Badasses, which is BL's take on Dungeons and Dragons, and this time the B&B game is Wonderlands, or set in that imaginary world at least, where an evil dragon world needs to be defeated and a magical kingdom needs to be saved. We create our hero in a typical Dungeons and Dragons style by picking a class, allocating skill points in various attributes, selecting a background and even customizing our character's appearance. Eventually we start a tutorial and learn the basic, and then the real adventure begins. Quest after quest we get closer to defeating the evil dragon world, and more of the background surrounding him and his origin gets revealed. Along that journey we will encounter a cast of characters that are fully voiced over, and each with their own quirks and a ton of side missions to complete. Plenty of bosses, mini bosses, big bosses along the way to the dragon world, so plenty of stuff to do. The combat system is pretty much what we are used to seeing from Borderlands franchise. It's a Borderlands game, even if not in name. That's what Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is, according to me, and that is a good thing for me at least. There's plenty of shooting with all sorts of guns. There is the typical shield system, which is now called Ward, and it still protects our HP. The grenades are replaced by spells, and the action skill slot is still there. One of the classes can even use their action skill slot as a second spell slot. The fast-paced shooting, sliding, jumping, busting, and casting manages to retain that Borderlands feeling 100%, so if you love the Borderlands franchise combat, you most likely will love the combat here. For example, regarding HP bars, flash is red, fire is effective against it, ward is blue, lightning effective against it, yellow is armor, you need poison versus it, bone is grey-white, suggested to use frost against it. There's also dark magic, which pretty much is life stealing based on the damage you do. Pretty solid addition. In terms of character creation, it's actually one of the best things about the game. Compared to what we had in Borderlands 3, you can now create your character the way you want them to. Main class, appearance, voice, personality, starting attributes. Customize as much as you want within what the game allows you, of course. There is even an option to override the limits of the sliders to create some weird looking characters. If you want to change something later, you can do so at one of the customization stations. There's one in Bright Hoof and one in the Cave Chamber, plus more in other spots. The explorable world consists of 14 map zones, plus an overworld area, which also has its own like a map. The overworld is a unique kind of place where you control your character via top-down isometric point of view and can explore various dungeons and points of interest. There are plenty of NPCs that can give you quests, as well as certain shrines that can grant you buff once you collect all 4 of that shrine's pieces, which are scattered across dungeons on that map. Some of them would require you to complete a quest before you can reach the piece. The overworld also connects the standard 14 map areas mentioned above, so it's like the glue between them. One of those areas is a town that becomes our base of operations, while the others are all different biomes with unique inhabitants, and all except one are part of the main quest line. Each one of the 14 map zones has got its own completionist-based collectibles to discover and a selection of side quests that are optional, which players can get from all sorts of colorful characters. The overworld also has randomly spawning enemies which trigger encounter fights if they reach you. You can punch them before they are close enough to avoid those fights. Those encounters will put you in a small arena arena area to fight off a wave of monsters and then get some loot and experience as a reward. As I mentioned earlier, there are a ton of quests and side quests. Main quest, side quest. The main quest is all about us completing our quest to defeating the evil dragon world, while the side quests are many and pretty different comparing one to the next one. There's a side quest, for example, that makes you fight alongside a bunch of creatures calling themselves Murphs, which is a reference to the Smurfs versus their evil blue brethren who have turned to the dark side, who pretty much look like the actual Smurfs. And then there's even an evil wizard referencing to Gargamel. The blue ones you fight, you see what I say when they look like the Smurfs. And not to spoil too much, but that might be one of the most fun quest lines. And there are also maybe a few boring quest lines, such as one from Claptrap that makes you go around collecting ore and just do your typical fetch quest tasks. Now, in terms of playable classes, there are 6 with the 7th one to eventually come as well. Keep in mind I've got detailed showcases where I take a closer look at the skill trees of every class and talk about them. You might want to watch those. This will be a shorter version. Brr-zerkers, tenacious, frost-infused bruisers who complement their firepower with an onslaught of brutal up close and personal melee attacks. Stabumancers are sneaky, critical hit-focused assassins who summon magic whirling blades to the battlefield and disappear into the shadows at will. Graveborn are death-touched acolytes who sacrifice health to unleash devastating magic attacks and become the phantasmal reaper of bones, accompanied by their manic demi-leash companion. Spell shots are gun-toting wizards who can unleash a constant barrage of spells and bullets and transform their enemies into harmless livestock with the snap of a finger. Spore Wardens are masters of nature who summon tornadoes and launch volleys of arcane arrows into enemy lines alongside their toxin-spewing mushroom companion. And the Clawbringers are faithful warriors who bring down thunder and flames upon their enemies with a spectral hammer alongside their fire-breathing wyvern companion. Wood and itemization is similar to what we have in Borderlands. White, green, blue, purple, and then legendary gear. There's also chaotic, which is a stronger version of legendary items. Just to show you an example of chaotic and non-chaotic of the same item, I will go here and you see alchemists. I'm trying to show you. You see alchemist here is 34%, 17.1%. Then here, an alchemist will be 30%, 15%. So that's like several percent extra, just to give you an idea. So you have 30% spell crit chance, whereas here it would be 35.6. Now there are 11 equipment slots. 4 gun slots, the main source of DPS for most builds, 1 melee slot. Melee's direct range will require a lot of min-maxing to be a main DPS source, keep that in mind, but some melee weapons like this one could be good for to keep it as a passive trigger. Then there's an armor, which is pretty much what replaces the mod slots, the class mods, and they would be able to roll any armor will be able to roll for any class subclass combination. For example, Bombardier is Sport Warden main Spellshot subclass, whereas Spellshot main Sport Warden subclass is an Alchemist. But this is ahead of the Snake, and it can roll with Bombardier or Alchemist or other classes. Shields are replaced by wards. Works similar to shields in Borderlands, takes damage instead of your HP until it breaks, eventually it refills. Then you have 2 rings, which will roll with gun damage, or companion damage, or spell damage, or melee damage. And then they would have 3 affixes and a special effect, the red text. An amulet which can roll with any type of elemental damage, or in general with just elemental damage, and for all elements, and it can also roll with power for every class. They all have their own effects, such as this one, for example, when you get below 50% HP, summons a sacrificial skip and triggers every 30 seconds. Then you have a spell, which is kind of like the grenades. It replaces the grenades. You have now spells, and some classes like this, like the Spellshot class, can get an action skill that sacrifices the action skill for a second spell slot. There are a ton of items with various legendary affixes to farm for if one wants to synergize their build to the limits. On top of that, you also need to grind like a lifeless zombie if you want each of your best in slot items for a specific build to also have the best possible rolls. The only thing you'll be able to reroll is unfortunately the enchantments, which are equivalent to anointments from Borderlands 3. So yeah, I think the chaotic versions of items, keep in mind it drops only in chaos modes 1 through 20. More about that later in that video. The mid-rank system replaces what we had as badass ranks, and it works simple. You decide in which one to put your first point. And if you pick Archmage, then your second point needs to go in Blade Master, then the third point needs to go in Deadeye, then the next point needs to go in Druid. And as you put points, you can see certain things require certain previous points to unlock. So in order to get this, you need to put points in this and this, but this needs this, and this needs this, and this needs that. This needs this, and this needs... You can see the lines yourself. I don't think I need to explain more. So there's various things you can invest into, and unfortunately there are certain things I don't like. More about that on the pro and cons, but in general it's pretty bland of a system, and I don't like the restrictions. The build diversity comes from various places. The mid-rank that I've just talked about is one of them. The equipped gear is another one. All the gear and all the affixes and triggers and procs. The skill trees, considering you have main class and a subclass and 40 points, and you have 2 action skills per class, and each class has their own class feats. That adds a ton of mix and matching to consider with those 6 classes, and then obviously there's a 7th class coming eventually. How many builds will be worthy of doing Chaos 20 content remains to be seen, but so far my impressions are that even a not fully min-max top 1% might be able to survive and do Chaos 20. Maybe not by themselves, we'll see. With the build I've been running, I'm not sure if it's top build, probably top 50%, but not top 1%. But it definitely seems on the stronger side if we have 2 sides, 2 halves. I think I like it, and I think you wouldn't need the hardest, toughest builds to do the hardest, toughest bosses. The enchanting system is one of the most disappointing things in the game. First of all, not only is it limited to only rerolling enchantments, which is like the anointments of gear, you also have to consider several things. How it works is you take an item and you have those things called moon orbs that you get by doing all types of content. They drop from enemies, but those are limited to 4,000. Bad thing number 1. Because each enchantment increases the reroll count. At count 0 it costs 2, then it costs 4 at count 1, then it costs 8, 16, 32 and so on, just to multiply by 2. And you get how it is. And eventually you get things that cost an immense amount, 4,096, and that means you can never enchant this anymore. After reroll count 11 you're done, because you cannot get more than 4,000 and it costs more than 4,000 to enchant. That means you can only get reroll count 11. Once you get that weapon you want to enchant, you put it here, and then you hold the button, it enchants, and now you have a choice of two. If I choose to discard, I press Q. If I choose to accept, I press this. Regardless of what I choose, it gets the count up. There was a bug where for some reason it wouldn't get the count up, but it no longer works that way. And the thing is, you don't have an option to accept the new and reroll again, or to discard the new, keep the original and reroll again. And what happens when you do either? Let's just accept. It brings your inventory scrolled all the way to the top. Now you have to go and find the item you are enchanting, and it wastes a lot of time. That's pretty much it. More about that in the pros and cons segment. Now that we've talked about the enchanting system, it's time to move on to the endgame. Keep in mind, I've got a detailed description of what I don't like and how it could get fixed for everything I dislike about the game, including the enchanting system, including the endgame. The endgame is a place, the Chaos Chamber, where I am, as you can see. The place where we spent most of our time after beating the story and completing everything else we wanted in terms of side missions, collectibles. There is this NPC, which I can't not spoil it. It's the Dragon Lord, the final boss. We interact with him. From there, players can select what type of Chaos Chamber run they want to do. There are 4 types of runs. Featured run is a pre-designed run which does not reward extra rewards. Pretty much no point in doing it other than comparing your results to someone else's results with the screen you get at the end. I think they change every week, but maybe it's every day. But I think it's every week. Then there's normal run, randomized run, 20% extra crystals. What a run is, I'll explain in a moment. Extended run, longer randomized run, again 20% extra crystals. Chaos trial, this increases the max chaos level. So you start with trial level 1. That lets you unlock level 2 if you beat it, and then so on and so forth until you beat the chaos trial for level 19 to unlock the maximum, which seems to be chaos 20. I haven't tried doing chaos trial 20 to see what happens. Probably it won't increase my level, it will just remain the same. Now, what is a chaos run? It's pretty much a series of encounters like the ones in the overworld dungeons and the overworld enemies that attack you that you have to complete. Each encounter will let you choose the main reward of the next room. There will be a mid-boss fight after X encounters, and in the end you face the big boss. The rewards one can choose will be a wood cache, a crystal cache, a temporary buff, / level increase to a random skill, or a choice of 2 random map affixes. And you will also always have, after each encounter, 2 portals, which you can upgrade for elite or keep normal, and that portal will exactly give you what spoils of war you want. It will show you what the rewards will be. So it's up to you to decide that. When it comes to the map affixes the Dragon Lord will offer, there are easy, normal and hard, and each of them do different things. Keep in mind there's also something called chaos crystals, a currency only within a run. Once you leave the run, all chaos crystals are lost. You use those chaos crystals for various buffs. There's going to be buff stations, and each buff will increase the price of the next and so on. So you gotta be careful how many ones you buy and get and which ones. There's various buffs like revolt movement speed, gun damage, spell damage, maximum worth, maximum HP, and so on. And you also use those 500 crystals will let you roll in the wood room from the bunnies. It will let you make it puke items of your choosing once. You can choose guns or melee weapon, or armor, crystals, etc. And you can even choose what type of gun you want: shotgun, SMG, assault rifle, etc. but there is so much need for quality of life. Again, more about that on my website and in the pros and cons at the end of the video. But wood filters is one of them, and how the game handles dying is another one that really needs to change. And also the wood room is something that really needs changing. And also sharing 3 lives during endgame run is also frustrating. And yeah, you can read more on the website version on struckweb.xyz about that. Now, Chaos Mode is something you unlock when you finish the main story of the game. You start with Chaos 1 unlocked, and Chaos 1, as you can see, is 25,444. So every Chaos level will give you 4% enemy damage, XP, gold, moon, orbs, and luck. It goes up to 80% on Chaos 20. But the enemy HP is kind of strange. It goes from 25 to 49, then 74, and then boom, 99, then boom, 125, 150, 176, and I'm just gonna scroll through all of them so you can see instead of me reading it out loud. The difficulty applies to all sorts of content: overworld, world maps, actually the world maps and overworld scales to your level, plus the chaos level on top, of course, and chaos chamber runs, of course, as well, and possibly to any other content that might get added. It's not that bad as it seems, having 20 ranks, but I think they might have condensed it to 10 instead of 20, and it would have been a much better experience. So instead of just 4, to give you 8. So double down on the increases, but half the chaos levels would have been better. But I guess they thought, hey, let's give them more levels. People love endlessly and pointlessly grinding for endgame levels. But yeah, I think it's a simple explanation, and hopefully you understood how it works. In order to keep this video short regarding pros and cons, I'm gonna try and just quickly mention them. I've wrote in detail what and why I don't like on my website struckweb.xyz. If you really want to know more, check there. In terms of pros, beautiful and wacky world, a fun main quest line, plenty of different enemies, classic Borderlands style combat, beautiful VFX, sound effects, and original soundtrack, plenty of guns and other wood, a multi-class system, which is one of my favorite things about the game. Mid ranks are cool but badly executed, so a pro but also a con in the mid rank system. Vast build diversity, which one is viable, I can't tell you, but a lot of builds are good and a lot of builds seem viable from my point of view so far. A ton of side quests, some very funny, some uber boring. Also, I forgot to say, keep in mind these are my personal views. What I think is a pro and what I think is a con could be different than what you think is a pro and a con. Some quests are uber boring, as I mentioned, so it's good that we have a ton of them. I wish some of them weren't that boring, but at least we can skip them. Fully voiced, quest cinematics and even regular NPC dialogue is voiced. Then a ton of completionist-based tasks, which some might not like, but I personally am fine with that. Although some will not like that they need to do completionist-based to get some extra stats. Decent drop rates and some diversity to how we get wood. Chaos Chamber is decent but lacks a lot of quality of life. Chaos Mode seems bloated for no good reason. There should have been 10 or 5 instead of 20, and they should have just condensed the bonuses that you get for each level. Crossplay and co-op matchmaking, it's good that it exists, but also it's a con that it's having terrible difficulties to crossplay right now, so for the time being probably disable crossplay. And the overworld is pretty cool, but it also lacks some quality of life, and we move very slow in there as well. And there's no fast travel in the overworld. Again, I wish they would just make it so that you can fast travel to all 4 types of overworld biomes. Cons, only one type of endgame. It's a joke for a company of the size of Gearbox in 2022 to release a game with just one type of endgame. Maybe they were in a rush, who knows. Hopefully they add something. Even if they copy paste the Slaughterhouse survival mode from Borderlands 3, I'll be happy. could use a lot of quality of life in many places. How fast rerolling system, and also its terrible UI. Not only can we only reroll enchantments and not the affixes, the actual stuff that really matters on gear, and not that enchantments don't matter. And the terrible UI, again, you can read more about my suggestions of how to fix this on my website. Terribly executed wood room. Terribly. Again, more about that in my website regarding what I think could fix it. Hopefully handled failed endgame runs. Again, on my website, info of how this can become better. Badly executed mid ranks. I wish they were more like baddest ranks and there was more freedom, kind of like baddest ranks in Borderlands 3. Shift matchmaking is struggling very often, as I mentioned, especially with crossplay. Too limited bank space, considering it's not hosted online and it's on our machines. It's a joke to only give us 500, give us 5,000. We can handle extra storage space on our hard drives. Not enough sorting options for bank inventory. For example, there's no sort by level. There's no specific filtering in the bank where you can sort items that only give you a certain stat, so you can find them easier. There are no wood filters whatsoever. I would love to be able to sort out and only see certain types of rarities or items with certain affixes on them. Consider adding something like this. In the bunny room, it becomes a nightmare when you've done a 10,000 crystals run and you've spammed one bunny to oblivion to try and get that item. You pretty much can't see what's underneath all the beams. Some side quests are super boring, as I mentioned, but you don't need to do them, so that's fine. And again, as I mentioned, the Overworld needs quality of life. Keep in mind you can subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button to not miss out notifications for more Wooter and not so Wooter content like this one or others like builds and guides. There's also memberships on my channel, which is a monthly recurring payment that you can cancel at any time, which will grant you access to special perks like emotes or badges made by me, as well as the option to ask me one-on-one for tutorials on Discord about Photoshop, Premiere and After Effects, just the basics though. Thanks again for watching all the way until the end, Struck Weapon. Till next time and goodbye.